Our topic today is building community with students while at a distance. And as we've talked about before in this space, Notre Dame has restricted student travel for at least the fall semester, meaning that all community engaged projects and experiences will need to be done remotely. And remote engagement does help us ensure that physical distancing and safety policies can be in place. But as we all know, it presents its own challenges for building relationships and community with student volunteers. So we're really fortunate to be able to have this conversation with you today. And we're really fortunate to begin with some insights from some of our community leaders, one of which is Roshana Lucky. She is the Director of Outreach and Partnership Development at the United Way of St. Joseph County. And so to start with today, we're going to just turn some time over to her and some folks at her team that she brought with her. Roshana.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Before my team introduce themselves, I just want to say that when COVID-19 hit, it really impacted me personally because most of my family is in Detroit. And after New York, Detroit got a lot of attention for how quickly the virus spread and how quickly people were dying. It was like before we were wrapping our minds as a family and everybody around what was happening. We started getting reports that, close friends were in the hospital or, one of them passed away, and it was just like, what is happening? So I immediately was in a swirl. Even prior to that, I was in Boston on Harvard's campus when the next day they decided to close the campus. So I was like, are they going to shut down the city? What's going on? And I immediately, most of my life here in South Bend, I've been here for 18 years. 16 of those years were actually with the University of Notre Dame. So I worked for the Robinson Community Center, Community Learning Center, and I've had really hands-on work with families and children. And so again, all of that was just a world spin in my life. And as we started rolling out, do I have access to share screen? Can I get access?
Access, sure.
Okay, thank you. One of the first things we started doing was having a conversation with Jim Baxter, who is over the Health Alliance. And we began to talk about what it meant for families. I thank you so much for the prayer that was prayed because, I couldn't help but think about how many children are now at home or how many loved ones are at home in a place that wasn't necessarily safe, right? And so we started, can everybody see the screen? So we started conversations around what's called mobilizing family supports. And these are the 6 organizations, 5 including me, 6 including United Way of St. Joe County. And we started having conversations about the impact on family and how in the midst of all these things that we see here, how COVID-19 was having a larger impact. And so we landed on this phrase, it's all about equity, resilience, and building a self-healing community. And then moving through this, as you know, United Way had a large, we started a fund to help nonprofit agencies, respond to this. And so in the midst of this development, I couldn't help but think about my days at Notre Dame, and I had students through the Center for Social Concerns and making those connections. And I was like, okay, Lord, I need two students. If I could have a team, that would be fantastic. And I have actually 4. So I wanted them to share today as far as one, their background, the schools that they attend, why they wanted to join in with the work that we're doing here. And then also I'll jump back in and just talk about what it's been like to supervise a group of students remotely, because we literally got started. Our office was closed down. You see some of us now in our office, but I wasn't leaving my home. My husband is in the immune compromised group. And so we really kickstarted. And if you haven't heard about Mask Up Michiana, this is the group that's leading it. And if you haven't, I'm sorry, if you have heard about it, this is that group. But if you haven't, please email me so we can get you access to that information. So we'll start actually with, let's go with Tiana, because that's the first person I saw on my screen. So if you can just introduce yourselves quickly.
Yeah, so hello everybody. As Auntie Shana, well, Miss Roshana Lucky is my godmom, so I call her Auntie Shana. But as she mentioned, I'm Tiana. I am currently a junior at Northeastern University in Boston. And I'm really grateful that Auntie Shana asked me to be a part of this initiative because over the past few years, I have been blessed with the opportunity to be a part of some pretty cool campaigns. One being 18 by 18, which is an initiative to get young youth voters and even if they're not, you know, the age of 18, just young youth activists who are passionate about making a difference, whether it be in politics or environmental concerns or whatever the case may be. We all came together and we started brainstorming ways back in 2018 to get the younger population to vote. And now moving to the present 2020 election, we're still doing some work, still to this day. So one of the reasons that Auntie Shana asked me to come along is because of my experience with campaigns and how to forego an initiative that gets all generations involved. That's a little bit about me and why I'm here.
Shanika, thank you, Tiana.
Hi, I'm Shanika Scales. I am a senior at Bethel University. I graduate August 16th. Whoop, whoop. I came along with Miss Roshana simply because I have a love for the community. I want to just be engaged in learning how to work with the community at a professional level. I have grown up in a particular community that I show a great love for, and I have participated in many things, but I felt like it was time for me to be able to reach out and help my community in a different way. And so I just decided to go back to school, and I decided to get more involved in different community engagement partnerships. And so I'm very thankful for the opportunity being presented in front of me. And I thank God for just allowing me to be a part of this and learning how to take it to a different level.
Thank you, Shanika. Rachel.
Hi there, I'm Rachel. I will be a senior this year at Notre Dame. I'm studying business analytics and sustainability. I'm on the swim team here, so I was planning to kind of be on campus this summer training. Obviously, that's not happening, so I'm from Minneapolis area, but I'm living off campus right now, and I was looking for kind of several, I guess, I reached out to several organizations of, I have a specific interest in nonprofit business, so United Way specifically stood out to me as someone who is really tackling this COVID-19 relief initiative, and I feel like what we've done so far has just been so amazing, and I've been so blessed to be part of this team so far.
Thank you, Rachel. And Love, because she will not say it, I would like to just announce she is the 2020 salutatorian for Notre Dame. She didn't get to have her graduation, so we have many graduations every time she speaks. So Love, if you can go ahead.
Sure thing. Thanks, Ms. Roshana. I'm Love. I graduated from Notre Dame in May. I studied biology and math, and I will be going to medical school at UPenn in, I guess, starting August 10th. So during my time at Notre Dame, I did an SSLP through the Center for Social Concerns the summer after my first year, which is when I met Ms. Roshana, volunteering at the Robinson Community Learning Center. Since then, I've helped her out with various projects, both at the Robinson Center and when she started working at United Way. And so when she started with the initiatives for this summer, dealing with the pandemic. She reached out to me, and I was glad to be part of the team and help out. And I think we've done a lot of great work this summer. So I'm really happy that I chose to be a part of this team.
Thank you, Love. One of the things that I learned when I was at Notre Dame about working with students, as you can hear, all their backgrounds are very, very different. And if you got into their personal stories, they're just as different. But one of the things that I try to do individually is one, think about what are the professional skills that I could try to offer them. I don't want, I learned a long time ago, you want to have quality volunteer opportunities for your interns or for your volunteers to help them feel connected and really dedicated to the work that you're doing. So when I'm listening, I'm also listening to, okay, what's their interest? Like, I'm clear on my need, but what's their interest? And then what areas can I plug them into, or how can we work out something together? And when they get an opportunity to see what their contribution is doing, like in this case, I believe what we're doing with Mask Up Michiana and the way we were able to roll it out. If you haven't been on our Facebook page, you see that since some of you all were on the call very early on, and you heard me talk about this big vision and the things we wanted to do. And now we have all of these partners. We have Notre Dame on board, St. Mary's. The Snipe Museum has just signed up to put together our art packets. And so we're having a big event on the 24th. And this is something else that I was able to give them experience on event planning, because if we're in the world of nonprofit, we know that when we have to do fundraisers or different things like that, you need some of that event planning and how to think about the details. And again, I'm always trying to help them see like the professional level, not just doing things, but how their skill sets are adding to it. So when we put together this flyer, we had been talking about it. And even though we had to cancel our first date, we had a rain date. And we were going to do 2 events. We're now doing 1. I'll share this with you all later. But if you look at this, there's so much detail that goes into the thoughtfulness of caring for our community. So I try to make sure, like, for instance, the One Drum Love Circle, it's all about resilience. The messaging around this, our hashtag of "In This Together," everything that we're trying to do, we're focusing on community health. So again, I try to make sure that everything is just layered, what our vision is here at United Way, but also how their work is impacting. And I would say that I think in turn, it has created a mutual commitment. I hope you could hear it in some of what they said. And we work hard. Anybody who knows me, I'm not the easiest supervisor either. I have high standards. I'm pretty, but I'm specific, and I try to be thoughtful of, okay, these are college students. And I try to make sure my expectations are at a level that meets where they are. And so again, I love being a teacher, and I try to make sure that they also feel that they're having a contribution while we're in the midst of a world-changing time. And so, Dave, I don't know if I hit all of the markers that you hope that I would, but I know I just want to be a voice to community partners to know that students will still be of wonderful value. It has not been easy to supervise and manage or communicate and do this remotely. But if you see what's happening with Mask Up Michiana and some of the other things that we'll be doing in the next few weeks, this was done remotely. I just want to stress that so that we can really try to just wrap our heads around. I know a lot of this is new, but it doesn't mean we have to stop. We may even be able to do some things more meaningful through this crisis.
Thank you so much for that. I love that you ended there on a moment of tone of positivity and looking forward to the future about what we can do. We talk so much about what we can't. do. We forget sometimes, I think, how much is possible, and that the opportunities are just different sometimes, not fewer, but just different. Yeah, thank you very much for that. Were there anybody have any questions for Roshana or the students that they'd like to ask? Any follow-up about?
Roshana, could you please drop your email in the chat box? Just want to get that secure before people duck out early, but thank you. And anybody else who's contributing to your program could also drop theirs if need be.
And I'll put both the emails that you can contact the team on, which is maskupmichiana at Gmail. Actually, Love, can you type that in? And then my email directly. And if you have any questions, so I see Tom, was that a question you had?
Yeah, it's kind of a question for everybody, but maybe since there's some students on the line here, you know, Roshana, some of the conversations you and I have had in the past, and some things got obviously put on hold at the beginning of the pandemic. The YMCA is still stepping into needs in the community this fall. We're working with a couple different offsite locations. We are partnering with the O'Brien Center, which is where I am right now. We announced that a couple weeks ago, so we have a physical site. But as we continue to do after-school care and family wellness programming throughout the community, there is going to be a need and an opportunity for students, perhaps college students, to help us. I've been working with a couple organizations that have youth leadership programs. I'm just wondering, I guess, overall, if anybody on the call has an idea of how we could effectively reach out to some of the local colleges, perhaps, where their students might have a passion for that kind of work with youth or family wellness, but because of, as David mentioned, travel restrictions, that's not going to necessarily happen, but maybe it could still happen for them and give them an opportunity within our community.
And I think David just dropped in that they are compiling a list for people. I can tell you, because we are meeting with all of the campuses across regarding Mask Up Michiana, we have as a team do a lot of conversation about student restrictions and how to get people engaged. Because my life has been youth work, I have been thinking really hard about what does that mean for students in our community who benefited from getting to know. I ran programming that was one-on-one tutoring. Some of those relationships continued even well into when they were in college. So I am personally giving some thought behind that. So Tom, we can maybe in another week or so after the July 4th event, by then I would have talked with every campus and I could share a little bit more about maybe somehow some of the other schools. But being connected with Dave, I think is going to be one of the best ways, because I know that students are also eager to have a connection.
Great. Okay. Thanks.
And I can very much reinforce what Roshana just said about students looking for a way to connect with the community. They're definitely feeling it. They definitely want to do what they can. And I would be interested in anyone else's thoughts on this as well. But I think, you know, connecting with existing student groups is always a great idea, right? The residence halls often are a great place to connect with students. They have a good community there. They're in frequent conversation with each other. There's other student groups on campus that are good places to start as well. So there's a variety of places you can begin. Yeah, Deborah.
So this is my question. When you talk about, so this whole students being constricted to campus, is that just in the fall? It doesn't apply to summer students. Is it only relative to freshmen and sophomores? How about juniors and seniors who live off campus? So that's my question.
That's a great question, and one that we've been going back and forth on and struggling with for a while to know exactly what the policy is going to be. So Lulu, correct me if I'm wrong in any of this, but it's my understanding that the universities current policy for the fall is going to be they're asking all students to not go off campus if they don't need to, kind of a thing, right? So that's, they recognize you're going to need to go potentially do some shopping or something else, but they're trying to ask students to not leave campus for any kind of non-essential activity, I think is probably the best way to put it. And the way that's been interpreted to this point that we've been told to understand that is that that includes community service and community engaged activities, so that no in-person activities are, the university is asking everyone to restrict all in-person community engagement for the fall. Now they've said that they're going to reevaluate that for the spring. Don't know, exactly what's going to go on with that. And obviously we've got a restricted time schedule for the semester. We're starting on August 10th and then ending on Thanksgiving as a way of trying to, they've eliminated fall break to try and restrict travel in that regard as well. But unfortunately, that's where we find ourselves for the fall.
So I have summer students who are working here. So does that mean when fall comes, I go back to campus, I can't have you anymore?
That's the official word.
Okay, I just wanted to be on the right side of the law.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
What will help is that if we follow the ordinance of the Department of Health, so that if the outer bubble continues to stay safe and all those fantastic things, that's why we're working so hard with the Campus Connection, so that agencies can get back to some of that support that they're accustomed to. So again, I hate to be a pusher of this message, but mask up, man, mask up so we can all stay safe. And I also want to say 2 of my team members have to go. They're packing up some giveaways. So thank you, Shanika and Rachel.
And I will say too that we're actively having these conversations at the Center for Social Concerns about when we're going to be able to support in-person activities again. And it's going to be likely a phased approach, right? That there's going to be benchmarks that we're going to need to hit before students are going to be going back into the community, whether it's in the spring or whenever the case may be. And as Roshana said, right, that it's going to be looking at transmission rates, and it's going to be looking at everything. It's going to be affected by wearing masks, social distancing, sanitizing surfaces, and doing all that we can to limit the spread of the virus. So yeah, so that's going to be, we're all going to be contributing to that effort as well. I guess there's so many ways you can think about this, but one would be, as we restrict the transmission of the virus, we're making it more possible for all of us to be working together again, including with students.
I wonder if there would be an opportunity, David, just kind of talking out loud, if we're not going to be able to have students in the community, and obviously Zoom isn't as effective, but for some of the organizations I work with, I wonder if some of the students would be interested in, I guess, holding court on a topic, so that younger kids can hear from students, even if it is over a Zoom call. Especially some of the organizations I'm intimate with younger students of color. I think as a white person, I can mentor, but there's some things that I'm not going to be able to speak into or that aren't going to be trusted. And so we're trying to integrate more local leaders of color and or students, so that our younger students that we work with can, look up to somebody and get some real world input. I'm just wondering if, just talking out loud, if that might be an opportunity.
I think so. I think that's a great idea. I think we want to be innovating and want to be creative as much as we can be. I'm going to look over at Ludi right now, because I know that at the Boys and Girls Club, they have done some good work about, because I think I don't know about anybody else in this call, but before all this happened, I thought of Zoom as, very much just something you use for business, right? There was nothing about socializing or connecting with someone through Zoom. But I think, Boys and Girls Club has done a good job of connecting the K-12 students that they work with with
Hard work.
university students and others. So, Ludi, can you tell us a little bit more about what you've done?
Well, I mean, for one thing, we discovered early on how much of a deficit we were in actually reaching families. So we've spent lots and lots of time and energy of, finding the best ways to connect in multiple different ways, which is awesome. So I think we're in like a far better place. So, I mean, our staff, they've made, if not daily, weekly calls and check-ins, and then there's texts and group texts. And we actually had a new marketing person and director of communications start right before we shut down. So she's been invaluable. I mean, she's using, so we are out there on Instagram and, Twitter and Facebook like we haven't been before. So it's been a lot of work, and but good results. So we just opened our doors physically to kids this week on Monday with lots and lots of restrictions and protocols in place. And we had a team meeting last night, and it's so far, I mean, everyone's pretty happy. I mean, the parents are happy, the kids are really happy. I mean, we have a much smaller ratio for one, so it's really nice for the kids and the staff, and just a lot more intentional time outside. Like a lot of the, we aren't allowing any volunteers inside the building. So all the, guests, like we have South Bend Civic coming and the park department coming, it's all outside, which is great anyway. But I don't know that all of that would have happened outside. You know what I mean? So, yeah, we'll see. We have 5 weeks of programming. We're supposed to end August, well, we do end August 7th, and then start up with whatever the school year offers, which is not, real clear right now. The South Bend schools and Mishawaka schools, that is, so.
Well, and Ludi, you had a tutoring program in place when, in March and April when this all happened, right? And remind me if I'm characterizing this correctly, but you transitioned to more of just kind of time together, right? Instead of having academic work, it was just more.
For one, we hadn't previous to March really been in touch with our families that way. You know what I mean? So it was a little bit of an adjustment of people to even know that that was a way for us to stay engaged. So we did start a tutoring a few hours in the afternoon, and different staff would be on, in the room. And we didn't have that big a response from the kids, but then we started just doing things like Teen Tuesdays, where they would reach out to the high school kids we have that are members of the Boys and Girls Club. And that became very popular. I mean, they would, they just wanted to see each other and kind of interact. And it was, with our staff there. So they had some, I don't know, funny themes for each Tuesday or games to play. They played, games with the kids online. So it grew. So.
Thank you for sharing that, because that's a great reminder that the purposes of all of our work may be changing right now as well, right? That what the folks that we work with might be most interested in and most in need of might be different now than it was before. And so just some time together, right, is suddenly taking on such a bigger significance that it might have. So Tom, I think those are great ideas, and hopefully we can all be innovating and thinking more about how to build community and how to connect people in meaningful ways that are going to be appreciated for those who participate. Well, typically we would go into small group conversation at this point, but we've had a great, robust conversation, and I think we'll just kind of move beyond that to our continue on with this group conversation, this large group conversation. So I'm just curious though, as we move forward, kind of what would a typical semester look like in terms of connecting with your volunteers? Right? How would you create community with them, and how would you connect with them on a typical semester?
Well, I can say that we have volunteers coming in from the University of Notre Dame, from Bill Purcell's class. I think we had 4 come in last fall, and it was so good. Actually, I'm going to correct myself. It was 5. We had one student that would go over to our BOLA group home. And I'm sorry, I didn't say I'm with Corvilla. So we work with adults with disabilities, and we have 4 group homes. There's one group home that's close to Notre Dame. So one of the students would go over there. And then we had 4 other students that came to our Connections Day program, and they connected with our clients there, helping with art projects, and there's a wood shop and different things like that. So it's kind of sad because that may not happen. So I really liked how Roshana was talking about just looking at different ways to get the students connected, because that's what we're going to have to do going forward.
I would say at the YMCA, not to get too deep into the past, but I was on the board of the group in Michigan that we merged with the Indiana group, and we just didn't have a lot of outreach in the past at the YMCA. So one of the things that we were trying to bring around was re-engaging, especially at our other location, where we had to close it with IUSB and Ivy Tech. Probably not so much Notre Dame, but I think it was just because we hadn't quite gotten there. But we would actually have some internships so that the students could come over and work through a semester. And maybe that was learning how to program events for kids. Maybe it was actually leading a team of volunteers. It was very skill-based, and we worked with the professors so that it would be a eligible internship for college credit. That was something we were just starting to get back online. And so I think, having taken 3 steps back, we're going to have to reimagine what that looks like and be ready for face-to-face. So we didn't have as much on our facility as we would have liked.
What we did for the Center for the Homeless, like so Maria, you mentioned the Common Good class with Bill Purcell, which is phenomenal. They always bring great students. I also, for those of you who know, of course, everyone knows Nancy Michaels' neuroscience class. Just all of the students that we had, the biggest thing with them was the relationships they built with our guests. So that's so hard to do virtually, even if it were through a Zoom meeting or something of that nature. Like, some of our guests may not be comfortable with technology. And I also should say I'm with the Center for the Homeless, for those of you who don't know. Some of our guests may not be comfortable with technology, or they may not feel comfortable talking to someone through a screen, just because creating those relationships, those face-to-face in-person relationships, is so important for our guests. And we've really loved that every single semester. So it'll just look a little different. It's not to say those relationships still can't be built virtually. It'll just be a little different, and more efforts will have to be made for trust to be established.
Yeah. I'm just going to add on that note, we had 2 students that wanted to continue after their time in the fall, and it was getting them engaged right in January, and then in February, and then March, everything shut down, and still keeping that communication, because we didn't know what was going to happen, to just encourage them. And then everyone was sent home, of course. And so there was just a lot happening, that it basically just stopped, unfortunately, because nobody could go into the group homes anymore to help out and things like that. But I agree with you that relationships were built, and that's why they wanted to continue with the volunteer opportunities. So yeah, I agree with you. You know, maybe just popping in and doing like, you know, a Zoom with the clients at the home or something like that. But it's not always going to be an easy thing.
So, I mean, this is a really important point. Thank you, everyone, for your conversation there. And I'm curious, Madeline, if you wouldn't mind, do you have any thoughts about, you know, ways that people might be able to connect offline still? I mean, there's not much in terms of travel, but would it make sense for students to, you know, send written notes? I know that the mail, the postal mail, is a strange and foreign world to a lot of our students, but would that be something that your residents would value, and would that help to build some of that relationship?
Yeah, we have had volunteers who have sent in cards. I know our friends over at Mendoza, they did that for our guests. They sent in cards. People have been making masks for our guests. Things like that have been really helpful. I know that having volunteers hold like a donation drive or something, that could also be beneficial, but also providing that other level of, you know, we don't want people just doing all this stuff for us without educating them and helping them learn and providing something to them, because that's what a partnership is. So, you know, anytime a student says, hey, I want to do this for you, I always think like, what could we do in return? Could we have like a video of one of our guests sharing their gratitude or their experience at the Center for the Homeless, things like that, so they can still make that connection with who they're doing these things for. Who are they making these cards for? Who are they making the masks for? Things like that.
So as we think then about moving into the fall, I'm curious, you know, what are some of your thoughts? I mean, how we talked about innovating and doing some different projects than we might have otherwise thought about. Are you going to continue to try to have students connect with your clients or residents and the folks that you serve and work with? Is that going to be an important part of the work that you would want students to be doing? Or would you, because we talked a lot about, you know, projects that can be done independently as well. Talked about research or, you know, data-driven efforts. I'm just curious to hear what your thoughts are in terms of where you would find the most value with students right now. Is it going to continue to be some form of communicating with individuals directly, or is it going to be doing work more independently?
I can say for the YMCA, it's we're actually being asked to do a little bit more in the community because of childcare and elementary school age kids' needs before and after school. With people going back to work, with schools changing the dynamics of how they're educating. We had one offsite after-school facility last year where we worked with about 50 kids from that school. We had an on-site at YMCA, and this year we're being asked to extend our offsite from 1 to potentially 3. We're going to go ahead and move into that because there's such a need in the community for that childcare, so that will work childcare at a reasonable cost. So we're going to have a need. How that gets filled, I don't know that we have enough staff to manage that. So we're really juggling those MOUs and those discussions we're having with some organizations on how we can lean into that in the community in different areas. The west side of South Bend in particular, we're making progress, but we would love it if students could actually be on site, because we're going to be on site. So I think until we see how this goes, as Roshana was saying with Mask Up Michiana, and if we can slow the spread and really see some major improvements here, maybe our bubble gets a little bigger at each of the campuses, and we can have, because to the extent that we're going to, as was mentioned for Boys and Girls Club, as much as we can do activities now that socially or physically distance kids, we're going to do that. We're going to have smaller groups, which means we're probably going to have more staff, which means a lot of things. So we're going to try to maintain that wellness. So hopefully there will be a point, whether it's this fall or in the spring, that college students locally would be able to join us with that. But we're seeing, and I know I'm talking to several other organizations that deal with youth, childcare is going to become a even more necessary this fall than it has been in the past, I think.
Great point.
So students are, well, not to really leave campus, but as it stands now and foreseeable future, we won't even allow volunteers in the building. Would students be able to come outside for anything? You know, I mean, like last year I got in touch with the Ultimate Frisbee group and they came out and did a whole thing, which was awesome because most of our kids had never played, and this group of students was so high energy. It was like perfect, perfect match. So I understand that like professors can't require, you know, students to go on site anywhere. That makes sense. But I'm just wondering if there's opportunities that would just keep them outside, if that's possible, or I don't know.
I think that's a great question. I think it's totally understandable. And I think there's two things to keep in mind there. One is that there is, you know, maybe three things. But one is that, you know, the university would currently say, you know, they're asking for students not to go interact in person with in community engagement settings, just because of the fact that it's so unsure about what that dynamic would look like right now, right? That there are, and as I look around this group, right, I think I would be confident with students coming to any of your spaces, but then there's others when, you know, we don't know. And I think some of that is just because people just aren't always sure how to approach it, and, you know, knowing how to live your own personal life in relation to the virus is one thing, but setting organizational policies to make sure that you know, a building and everything is a safe space is potentially something else. Second thing is, you know, we are definitely looking at, again, that kind of phased approach to getting students back into the community as quickly as possible. And those kinds of outdoor experiences where you can, they're, you know, optimal for physical distancing. I mean, that's going to be one of the first things I imagine that we were going to be doing, right? And there's other organizations like Reigns of Life and Unity Gardens and some of these other places that they live outside. That's all their work is outside.
Mm-hmm.
You know, El Campito is putting in a garden, and Mano Unidad is putting in a garden and other things, right? So there's going to be those opportunities that are going to be some of the first things that students are able to do again.
Can I also add that I just want to add an extra narrative to this, that is not just keeping the students safe, it's
Right.
us safe.
Right.
Because we have, if we look
Great
at
point.
these students have been all over. You know, some of them are not stopping to travel. Some of the way the testing is. So I've been trying to tell people, again, being a part of Notre Dame, I absolutely know the mixed messages about campus life and things like that. But the one thing that I try to say, because of my information with the Department of Health, is this is actually a mutually beneficial decision, and in some ways protecting us a little bit more than our wonderful young people who have oftentimes a stronger immune system. So if they are showing up, I am encouraging partners of the United Way to be really thoughtful about their protocols and how will they guarantee that they are keeping their staff and their children safe. So I just wanted to make sure that that didn't get lost, because the world that we live in, Notre Dame and other campuses have been more, at least appear to be more concerned about their young people, but really this time is a wonderful opportunity to keep us all safe.
No, I
That's
agree.
such a great point, Roshana. Thank you so much.
Thank you for emphasizing that. I think that some of the work that I'm doing with Dave is helping create some internships and volunteer opportunities for students in the coming months. And I think that some of the conversations that we're having are risk management conversations from our side of things, but also really emphasizing how we can protect all of you, because you're exactly right. Students are coming from far away and have interacted with different people. Young people don't want to listen all the time to guidelines and restrictions, so there's no way that we can tell for sure that they've been practicing social distancing in a safe way. So we want to be sure that we are emphasizing with them that it is as much of a protection for them as it is for you. And I think with that, we'll still try and figure out our best protocols for if we can take drop off materials and pick up, how students can practice safe sanitizing, as well as putting the emphasis on community practitioners as well, just to work together. I think Maria's example of the plywood is a great example, the woodworking, so how we can drop, like students could easily pick up and drop off if they had those skills, and then making sure we're mitigating risk. So thank you for all your points.
Great point. Great point. Mary Fran, did you have something you were going to say?
Thanks, Dave. I'm a little concerned about the mixed message that sends in terms of, the universities telling students no. I mean, we have a lot of students that we connect with through internships, through work study, through just general volunteers. We have a relationship with 5 women's dorms at Notre Dame, which we do a lot of stuff remotely. So them continuing to do the kind of work that they've done for us in the past will be really helpful. But I'm a little concerned about the fact that, I mean, first of all, we would say thank you, but no thanks, because our policy right now is very strident about not just protecting our guests and our staff and the few volunteers that are working there. But I think if organizations start, allowing people to filter in, that will just encourage students to be out in the community. And I think it's, I think I will say, as a proud member of the United Way and a partner with them, I think I would continue to support the fact that, for the time being, we just can't do that. And if people want to connect, virtually, we can work on those things. The challenge is with the very limited number of staff and, few volunteers that we have, we are running as fast as we can just to get the work done that we need to get done in terms of serving, the women and children of our community. And so creating projects for students to work on, is not something that we can do right now. I'd love to see them work more on issues of trying to get people out to vote and finding ways, to help and encourage things in the community in that regard. But many of our guests don't have access to the internet, have poor poor access to technology. So even being able to have students do things virtually with our guests is very challenging. And so I know I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I think that if there's a message being sent, then as a community partner, I want to be consistent about that message.
Yeah, and I just want to go back and, I mean, my comments, we certainly need volunteers, but at this point we're working with our staff only. So yeah, I didn't want to misrepresent, but we brought 11 of our childcare staff back that works with any of our after school programming, and we've gone through some pretty rigid training so that when we're ready for August, actually following the CDC guidelines is going to be a extremely difficult process, even for not necessarily the elementary age kids, but certainly for our babies to 2-year-olds, because if you read through that, it's going to be a challenge. But so we're trying to meet the needs of the families in the community. with our own staff. So my comment earlier was we would love to have volunteers. At this point, we are committed.
Well, I really appreciate that. Thank you for those comments. And I want to be clear that, you know, my comments were not meant to suggest that you should or shouldn't, right? That the university has its policy, and I just want to be clear that we're not trying to make a decision for you, for your organization. I also want to be clear, though, that you absolutely can say, no, we're not interested. We don't have capacity or time right now to work with Notre Dame students, and that will not affect the broader relationship going forward, right? So if you say right now, you know, we'd love to, but we can't, we totally get that. And then we're going to check back with you in a few months and say, how about now? And if the answer continues to be no, we can't still, we'll say, okay, great. And then we'll check back in a few months, and we're going to be here. We're not going away. We're not going anywhere. We don't want to be making any decisions for you, but we totally recognize that it's going to be potentially different, that even when the university opens up again, you still may not be interested or have the capacity to connect with our students. And that is fine. You know, our goal is to help you further your work and your mission. And if that means having students work with you in a virtual capacity, great. If that means waiting until they can do it in person, great. If that means waiting, you know, longer and just not doing anything with students at all for a while, great. Whatever it needs to happen, that's what we're here. We want to be a fully collaborative partner with you on your work. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. Well, we've hit the 1 o'clock hour, so I want to be cautious of everyone's time, conscious.